Genifer Murray, welcome to Spain.
Roberto, I love Barcelona.
So, you've been here a few days. You've had a chance to see what's been going on here. How does Spain compare to, say, the USA, Denver in particular?
So it's very interesting. I didn't know what to expect coming here. You hear a lot of things, but once you get immersed in the culture, you find out real quick that Barcelona is about the social clubs. It's about the personal choice to be able to use cannabis. So we respect that. But it's very different in the U.S. because we are starting with the medical side, and going from that direction. Of course, we've legalized in several states, but in Spain, it's a very different story. It's a very different story, all about personal rights.
So, talking of the personal rights in Spain, you'd mentioned about the fact that it's different from the fact that medicinal or medical is not quite as talked about as much. How do you think you can help that conversation change based on your experiences in Colorado?
So I think the first thing is to create relationships with doctors. Just speaking, you and I had a doctor come up who runs actually a club here, and they test all the medicine and they do only medical. But of course they can't say that. So I think the first thing is to absolutely get a dialogue with the doctors here, help them get the information they need, so if the time comes, they're comfortable with recommending cannabis.
And so with the legislative part, we were part of a conversation about regulations, and they talked about trying to keep the movement moving, if you like. What was the biggest learning for you when you heard them talking about regulations and some of the hurdles that they had trying to overcome that? What did anything surprise you? Did anything come that made you feel that's interesting and I would like to know more?
Well, I think what was the most interesting is that they think in the United States that we have a big money tree that funds all of the marijuana businesses in the United States, which is very false. There is yet to be a company that loans money on equity. It's all been loans. So explaining that to people here and explaining that they may have different opinions, right? Each of the clubs have different opinions, just like in Colorado, each of the industry groups have different opinions, but they have a common goal, and that's cannabis, and they need to figure out how to work together on regulation. Regulation works, and cannabis is not going away.
Exactly. It's been fascinating being here the last few days, how the perception of what's happening in the USA, that somehow we have a lot of money to look at things. Moving back to testing, obviously in the US, where CannLabs operates primarily, obviously in Colorado, there's aspects of the mandate that's been enforced at the moment. What about testing in Spain? Obviously, smoking in flower seems to be the predominant use of the product. So how would you see a testing approach working in Spain, given it's culturally a little bit different from the US and perhaps it's a little bit more social versus medicinal? So how would you see a testing environment operate here?
So we have met a woman that actually is from one of the testing labs in Valencia, Suzanne. And there's also their laboratory represented here, which I was very impressed with. They actually have a GC here to talk about testing. So I feel that it's, back 3 years in Colorado again, talking about why is testing important and why should you spend money on it. For one, again, the doctors, they need to understand the different parts of the plant, which you can't understand without testing. So I would simply create an education campaign on, this is why we test, this is what we get out of testing. I mean, everybody has been growing for high THC. Well, now we're looking at some of these other minor cannabinoids that could be, key in some of the things that cannabis does for us, not only medically, but adult use recreationally. So I think that we would just go through the education route, and I think that once people understand that it will move the industry forward, either adult use or medical, that I think people would want to get involved with that.
Okay, a couple of more questions. You attended the presentations yesterday, Anzo from Bedrocan, and he talked it seemed to capture your interest a lot about his approach to testing and how the importance of understanding the constituent parts of the plant goes beyond THC. Can you share some of your insights or some of your thoughts on Anzo's presentation? Because you really did seem to be mesmerized by it, to be honest.
So Arno Haskamp is the god of science, cannabis science. So I've heard a lot about him. I've read a lot of his papers. So it was really exciting to see him in person, got his autograph. But he has really brought science forward. Bedrocan is key in understanding the plant, but also manufacturing the plant. People feel that it's not going to be able to be manufactured consistently, and Bedrocan has proved everybody wrong with that. So Arno has been key with all of that, and his science approach is so amazing. The more we know, the better, again, we can move this industry forward. So actually being in the audience and having him upstage was like, gee, I don't know, going to a rock concert and seeing the rock star on stage.
Well, certainly he was one of the quietest rock stars I think I've ever met. This event here, Spannabis, has been on the go for 12 years. Obviously, now that things
decriminalized or legal?
We believe it's been decriminalized,
okay.
But what was clear to us is that legislation isn't very clear over here. What's your impression of the Spanish, sort of the cannabis culture here versus, say, the US today, and perhaps the US when you first got involved with the industry?
Again, I think it's just a matter of explaining to people that medical has what has driven this movement, this industry forward in the United States. And I feel that if Spain would embrace more and get more educated with the doctors and such, the collectives, the smoking clubs, I believe that more people in Spain would take notice, including legislators. It's very hard to convince a legislator that you need more things to socialize with, right? But it's easy to explain to somebody that my kid has epilepsy and without cannabis, my child could die, but has 150 seizures a day. I think that anybody can relate to that, and I think that is going to help Spain move forward more than anything. Okay,
and the World Cannabis Conferences itself, it's the first time CannLabs has been involved with it. I think you were quite impressed by the branding that CannLabs had at the event, and hopefully for people that are watching this back home, they've had a chance to look at some of the other things that have been going on. But why was it important for you, say personally, and for the company to be here at Spannabis for the first time? What was the benefits to CannLabs participating in a global cannabis conference?
So CannLabs has not done anything this big, if you will, especially global. So to see CannLabs up with some of these other international or local brands was very exciting. But also that we represent the science and science-based solutions. I think that's very, very different than any of the companies here. It's very different than the Cannabis Cup that we have in Colorado, although kind of the same theme, a little bit different. Our companies are a lot of dispensaries and growers, and of course that's illegal here. So mainly the booths are seed companies. Almost every booth here is a seed company, a lighting company. So as far as who is exhibiting here is completely different. I hope we're able to figure out how more seed companies can come into the U.S. because really they have key genetics here, medical and adult use genetics that we could benefit in Colorado. So really just meeting the people, understanding their thoughts on cannabis, whether adult use or medical, and working together. Everybody I've talked to, wants help and wants to understand how to do it. And I don't think we need to recreate the wheel. I think that in the United States and other countries, we have enough information available to help everyone.
Yeah, it's interesting for me as well. This is an event that CannLabs really couldn't have justified 12 months ago because of the nature of the industry. And what's interesting for me is arriving here, people knew who CannLabs were. We're clearly seen as some of the leaders in cannabis innovation, both with our approach to science and with some of the other deliverables that we're doing recently on the business side. So, I think that this type of event elevates the conversation to another level. I think that when we were discussing what was happening in the United States, I think people were perhaps surprised, how we have now moved beyond just thinking about the movement. We're actually looking at it as a business, and clearly CannLabs has put some great building blocks forward, and this event I think has done wonders for our brand, and certainly meeting a lot of the thought leaders here in Europe has been good for us to listen. So Genifer, do you want to add anything on to that?
I do. I would love to talk about Women Grow, womengrow.com. It's a place where women can go to help, or if they need help. We plan on cultivating women entrepreneurs to be in more of executive and business owner situations. And if you'd like to learn anything more about that, you can go to womengrow.com.
Great. Well, Genifer, I want to thank you for helping be the keynote speaker here at the World Cannabis Conferences. You did a great job. CannLabs obviously is getting some great exposure here, and the weather's taken a slight turn for the worse here, but it's been a lovely few days and we've had some great experiences. So thank you very much.
We have, and thank you, Barcelona. Thank you so much.
Adios.